Hello. Happy Friday. Or whenever you're watching this, getting myself set up here with all my supplies for a live stream that I have really been looking forward to. I look forward to all of them, most all of them, which is nice. But this one specifically, this energy, it's like big, and just by nature it's big. It's a full moon anyway, and the specific energy of this time and the way it's playing out in the larger energetic conversation has me very excited to talk about that. Um, but while everyone gets with us here, I'm going to take time up top here and talk about or rather respond to a question comment that I got a couple days ago, and not necessarily related directly to astrology, but something else that I talk about a lot on my channel, which is shadow work. And personally, for me, shadow work does go hand in hand with astrology, um, just because when I look at a natal chart, every single placement, every single aspect that we have is part of our light and part of our shadow. Like every single piece of energy has both sides to it. So as we, relate to our natal chart, like you're almost guaranteed to run into pieces of your shadow. Um, but I thought this was a really good question, and kind of like the vibe that I got was definitely more at like a beginner level of approaching the shadow. If I misunderstood the original question, Regina, please forgive me, but that was very much the angle that I prepared some notes and everything. Super into it. I actually was inspired with like a whole program around like if you were going to start from square one with shadow work, like how would I walk somebody through that? And so that was like really fun to get to think about. But first, let me start with what Regina said. So my question is, how do I increase more consciousness/awareness? I'm trying to become more aware of my shadow, but I don't get much. So again, that's where I get my interpretation as far as like seems like a more beginner vibe. And so where would I start with this conversation? I did some contemplating in my morning time this morning so that I could think about like, you know, I personally see, and that's, a huge disclaimer to wrap around all of this. And if you're on the replay and you came for Sagittarius full moon stuff, check the description box. There will be a timestamp there for you to like jump ahead. But I do also think that this fits nicely with what we're going to get into later, because I do think it's possible that this energy that we have cooking with the Sagittarius full moon could absolutely bring us face to face with some of our shadows. So as far as I can see, this is a good intro. So how to raise awareness, what is our shadow, how do we become aware, all of this, where would I start? And the broader piece that I want to say is like the way I relate to it, and that's where I was going with that, with like disclaimer of like this is all just how I relate to it, right? Like I'm not a certified professional in any of the shadow work kind of topics. So take it all with a grain of salt and run it through your own system and see what resonates as true for you. That's a huge theme of this Sagittarius full moon anyway. Um, but how do I see it? I see shadow work as a subsection of a larger category called emotion management. So, good morning. Um, so, emotion management is really what we're talking about when we're getting into the territory of shadow work, and shadow work specifically dealing with painful emotions. So, emotion management covers the full spectrum of all emotions. Shadow work is really focusing in on pain. So, that's kind of how I'm relating to it in a really large context. Um, the very first question that I would ask somebody who is wanting to enter into a shadow work space is why? Why do you want this? Why do you want to engage in shadow work? And the reason I start here is because there's a lot out there. It's awesome to see how much more content there is, like, even than this time last year or 2 years ago, like, shadow work seems to be becoming, like, more talked about, and that is encouraging. I think it's overall a very good thing, but also there's a lot out there around it, and there's a million different perspectives, and we're specifically talking about territory where there is pain and tenderness and wounding already there. So it's just delicate territory, and that's why I say, like, having a good reason why you're stepping into this, like, that's also a helpful starting point of, like, why do you wanna know more about shadow work? Why do you want to raise your awareness and your consciousness? Most likely, if I had to guess, like, the reason that I came to it, my why, was I'm having painful relationship outcomes, and 100% truthfully, I've noticed a pattern where it plays out the same with the same timeline in all of these different relationships that I've had, and I'm putting it together that I think the common denominator might be me, and I went to therapy because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, I can't deal with this all by myself." Like, this is a that's a big one. Realizing that, like, you may be your own problem, right? Like, that's essentially shadow work in a nutshell, is, like, figuring out those unconscious patternings that exist inside of you that are playing themselves out, and shadow is a concept that I think is, like, pretty pretty helpful to understand. Like, when you get into emotion management, shadow work is kinda just part of it because there are inevitably going to be emotions that run through your vessel that do not make any sense to you. Like, they are completely irrational, completely illogical, and, like, that is, I would say, your shadow talking to you. Like, if you don't get it, why you feel the way you feel, then that's your shadow. That's, like, a version of your inner child, a version of your inner woundedness talking to you and trying to, like, come to the surface to receive love and healing in that moment. So, by definition, shadow is the unconscious part. It's the part that we can't see. It's the part that we don't have conscious access to. So, it's our unconscious. And basically, my example is, imagine the center of your own back, like right in the middle of your own back. If you had something there that you wanted somebody to see, or that you wanted to know, like, what is this? I need to confirm, like, what is this? I need eyeballs on this spot. How would you go about seeing that spot? I came up with two options. One, I think you could borrow somebody else's, so you could say, "Hey, what is this on the back? On the right here, what is this?" Dolly did this to me the other day. That's what gave me this analogy. Or two, you could use a mirror. Theoretically, you could, like, go get in the mirror and, like, look and, like, try to, like, see, okay, what is this back there? It's in a spot that just naturally you do not have access to. And so, in order to get access to that spot, you have to include something outside of yourself. You have to have a reflective surface that you can look into. You have to have a friend who can come and, like, help you see it clearly. So that's essentially shadow work also, in a nutshell, is like, the bottom line, we require an experience outside of ourselves in order to become aware of our shadow. So, really, shadow work is looking into our relationship patterns and looking at the outcomes that we have in relationships. And, like, usually, as you, like, do your shadow work and you're, like, working through the layers, it's like you piece together how, like, you recreated this dynamic with your mom in this relationship with this friend, and it ended in this particular way, and then you recreated it with this friend and it ended in basically the same way. And, like, you start to see how so many different people in your life came to be the mirror to help with even just, like, one thread of your particular shadow. So essentially, shadow work is learning to process our unconscious pain and suffering so it stops unconsciously playing out in our relationships. It's like those patterns that we don't fully understand. My pattern that I did not understand that took me to therapy way back when was jealousy. I had a pattern in my relationships where I would turn into a jealous, crazy person, and I had never in this lifetime been cheated on that I know of. Like, I've never gone through that experience, and yet there was something inside of me, like, from my very first boyfriend that was, like, devastatedly scared of, I can't function, I'm so scared that he's gonna leave and, like, go find somebody else. So, like, makes me wonder, is that something that's hanging on from a past life? Like, that's a wound that I encountered before? It doesn't really matter how you wanna relate to that, whatever kinda helps you feel the best about relating to the pain that you currently have, and realizing, like, okay, so every single relationship I have ends at about the same timeline in me being completely jealous and a wreck, and eventually the relationship just erodes into, like, it just falls apart, basically. And that pattern brought me to the edge of my own pain tolerance, like emotional pain tolerance, and sent me to therapy. Like, I need to fix this. I'm noticing that I think I'm the common denominator. And especially in that last round, that last relationship, that particular unfolding, I think I was ready enough. And, the way it unfolded, it let me see that it's starting inside of me. Like, jealousy as an emotion includes 3 people by definition. It's you and your partner and somebody outside the relationship, and there's, like, a fear that you're gonna lose what, belongs to you, isn't even, but, like, lose what is yours to somebody else. It's that fear that creates jealousy, and that was, like, that's my well down into shadow work. Is I was so deeply afraid that that outcome would happen that I was basically poisoning my own relationships with my own fear. And it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy at a certain point of, like, of course the relationship is gonna fall apart because you're injecting this, like, craziness. Like, I felt like I'm not even me. Like, it was like a whole other rush of personality that would come online, and she was not pleasant to be around, and really, really difficult for me to live with, and obviously all of the relationships that I had, like, they ended in that same way. And eventually it let me see, like, okay, I think I'm the one that is in all of these different situations. And essentially what my therapist helped me see when I did go and, like, explain what was going on, she was very helpful in helping me to see that, like, I didn't really at that time have a basis inside of myself of self-worth, of thinking fairly about myself, like, not even thinking highly of myself, just even being fair to myself, that I did have value, that I did bring something to the table. Like, I was not acknowledging any of that, and that definitely, like, that lack of self-worth and inner foundation, it led to a deep fear that the security that I had found inside my relationship would be taken away by some outside force, and then I would be back to insecure. And it caused me to act out in all kinds of ways that I'm not proud of them, but I'm also not ashamed of them, because I was absolutely in the clutches of my inner wounding, my patterning that I came here to heal. I was watching this Matt Kahn video the other day, and he said something really beautiful about, if you have it as part of your healing journey, it's part of your inheritance of what you came to contribute to this planet's healing. And so for me, jealousy is a big one that, like, I came to help heal jealousy, apparently, like, on a deep level. And to essentially, jealousy is only a symptom of a much larger wound of self-worth, right? Like, so really I came to help heal that wound of self-worth, and to, like, practice our worthiness, to practice our deservability. And by understanding my shadow patterns, my unconscious patterns, that, this is just how I feel. This is, for a long time, I would say this is how they're making me feel. Like, if they wouldn't act like they're acting, then I wouldn't feel this way. So the problem is that they are being bad and I'm having to suffer over it. And while I was in that extended chapter, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to move forward because I was trying to still find a way to make them be different. It made me very controlling of the other person, very intolerant of them having outside relationships, like, there's a possessiveness to it, like, it's not pretty. It's not anything close to a healthy relationship, and mostly it was reflecting to me the unhealthy relationship that I had with myself, AKA my lack of self-worth. So, this pain and suffering that lives in our unconscious, like, I I believe personally that we all have it, that it's like all that that's part of why we even come into physical reality in the first place is to heal, to like this is a training ground of healing basically for a lot of us. Some of us are here for other reasons. Um, so how did the pain and suffering that's in our unconscious, how did it get there? Right? Like how did our shadow become our shadow? And this part is important, I feel like, because basically it got there because in the moment that the pain was triggered, it was too much for you to handle. You basically your ego, your self-protective mental mechanism that will keep you from being overwhelmed by emotional pain, your ego rejected that pain into your unconscious, aka into your body, and therefore that energy has been in there being carried around since the pain was triggered, you rejected it, basically pushed pause on that and just put it in your body and we're like, "I'll come back to that later." And shadow work is essentially like a long list of things that have been put on pause that do need us to come back and heal these wounds, process this pain, grieve these losses, cry these tears. There's things in there that at the time that it happened, it was too much, literally too much that you couldn't handle it. And so again, I say, you wanna go in there, like, if you wanna go explore shadow work, I'd have a really good reason. I'd have, like, something like you're at the edge of your pain tolerance, you're contemplating, "Do I wanna be alive or not?" Like, that's how I came to shadow work. Not to say that everybody's path is gonna be like mine, but I didn't go poking around in my wound for no good reason. Basically, what I was manifesting on the surface hurt worse than the thought of having to go and look at, like, my own shadows or whatever. Like, I figured that was probably gonna be the less painful option than what I was currently living. I think that's when it's time for shadow work, is when you think, like, your own emotions are gonna hurt less than whatever's happening in the world around you, that's a great time to go and do your shadow work. If your life is, like, okay and you're decent on a day-to-day, go looking to do shadow work. I let it come to me, I let the pain come, and then I use my tools, and that is personally, I'm looking at shadow work as a piece of emotion management. So, I think when you start into emotion management by trying to learn how to do shadow work, that is like trying to learn to swim in the deep end of the pool. And I personally, if I was gonna start with somebody from 0, I wouldn't start with shadow work, I would back up to emotion management and look at, like, 2 critical, essential tools for emotion management that I think everybody should have in their toolbox, but, again, see what you think. And just to kinda put a disclaimer here, there are lots of other ones, like, there are tons of tools for managing your emotions and managing that energy in real time as it's arising, like, as the pain comes, developing the skills on how to receive it, how to process it, how to be with it while it runs its course, in and developing those skills so that your ego doesn't reject new pain into your unconscious self. Like, learning how to process the current right now emotion is definitely step number 1, and so these 2 tools are about that. They're about, like, the current right now emotion and getting a handle on, like, what even is it? What even am I feeling right now? And, like, is it am I okay? Am I okay in this moment? So the 2 tools are 1, the window of tolerance, and I'm gonna talk more about both of these, and 2, the observation deck. So the observation deck I've definitely talked about before, and it's a visualization that I came up with in the midst of my own pain and suffering. that helped me to detach from it enough to be with it, so I'll talk through that. The window of tolerance I heard about on a podcast recently, but it seems to be like a general psychological concept, so you may have heard about it before. I had not. It's relatively new for me. So, the window of tolerance is and this is a definition that I summarized based on my own feeling of working with it in my practice, even though I did not make it up. Um, so it's a frame of inner space that you know how to access, where you feel safe and stable and able to function. So I think the most important part of that is that, yes, you feel stable and able to function, but also that you know how to get there. And I think what this reminds me of is like before some boat will take you out scuba diving, they want to side. So like before you can go scuba diving, you have to know how to handle certain problems that could arise when you get down there. So again, before you go diving into your shadow, it's like, do you know how to get out? Do you know where the exit is? Do you know how to come back to your window of tolerance? Where basically some of the practical ways that you would do that is like recognizing that, okay, this energy is too much in this moment. So I'm going to go for a walk. I'm gonna go outside and go for a walk. That happened to me yesterday where I was watching something. Oh god, and I just, like, kept going, "Oh my god," and, like, just, like, taking it, and it was ridiculous, and I just kept taking it, and finally, I just, like, pushed pause, and I was like, "I've got to get out of here," and I, like, went for a 2.5-mile walk because I was so full of energy that, like, I can't do this anymore. I need to go do something else to move this energy so that I can get back to my window of tolerance. Other ways, a big one is just take a deep breath to like calm even for just 1 second to like drop into your body and relax your body. Take a few deep breaths and put whatever it is that is causing a lot of emotions, like put it on pause even for just a little bit. The bottom line, when you have a well-defined, easy to access window of tolerance, you can venture as deeply into your own muck and shadow and wounding as you wish to explore because you can retreat to your window of tolerance at any time. So it's like an escape hatch. It's like if you're going to go diving under the surface into a place where you don't even know what you're gonna encounter when you get in there, that's the whole point, it's unconscious. It's like, do you know how to come back up for air? So, finding your window of tolerance is a good place to start on I think, like, starting on the easier end of emotion management with, like, do you know how to cultivate positive feelings on demand? So, basically, that's what these practices of how to get in your window of tolerance, it's like cultivating positive energy on purpose, going for a walk, taking a deep breath, journaling, detaching from the thought, or better said, switching to different thoughts. There's, another visualization that is called jumping trains, where this is like an Abraham concept of like how she teaches about thoughts. Like the more you stay on a line of thought, like a train of thought, like let's say you're doubting yourself. If you're sitting there thinking thoughts about doubting yourself and worrying about, who's going to figure out that I'm not worthy and yada, 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 the longer you stay there, I mean, you're not sitting still. You're on a train headed for somewhere. You're adding speed, you're adding momentum to that train of thought. And the longer you are going to join, the more pieces in the physical reality that are going to move in response to your attention on that line of thought. Versus if you jump trains, if you can realize, I don't like where this train is headed, so I'm going to intentionally switch. I'm going to jump over here across the track onto a train that's going the other way. And what might do the trick? Again, going outside, moving, picking up your dog, petting your cat. Um, there are lots of different ways, taking a shower, turning off the TV, like stopping the stimuli is a big one. Like basically zoom out from where you're focusing, state your boundaries, and detach from the trigger. Like if there's something that is actively bothering you, see if you can figure out how to get back into your window of tolerance and practice that for a while. And when you're really confident that you can achieve that move, you can go from wherever you are back into safe, stable, able to function. You can get back in your window of tolerance on demand, then you're free to dive to whatever depth you want, and you know that you're gonna be able to get back out of it. And this is where, like, the detaching from the trigger part is really interesting because I think there's like, we treat physical pain very differently than emotional pain because the emotional pain is, like, inside of us and invisible maybe. Like a physical injury, like if you break your leg and your bone is like sticking out of your leg, like that's visible and we can point to it and we can show people like, look at my wound and it hurts. And so then we get special considerations. We get a little handicap placard to hang in our car while we get move around and we heal. We get treated like we're healing. And if you have emotional pain, it's like really not generally like that in the world, but that doesn't mean that we can't be that way towards ourselves. Where basically we can take our emotional pain as seriously as physical pain. And again, see about getting ourselves back into our window of tolerance. And most likely, what that's going to mean is detaching from the trigger. So, like, my example is if you touch hot and it's burning you, like, let's say, like, really hot and it's like burning you, would you look for somebody to ask if it's inappropriate or if it's appropriate to detach from the thing that's hurting you? If the thing is burning you, would you ask if it's appropriate to detach from the thing that's hurting you? No. Like your brain and your body aren't even gonna give you any moment to reflect on what you should do. Your hand will yank back, Like you won't think about it. It'll just be a natural response because your body protects you from pain. Your reflexes protect you from pain. And emotional pain is no different other than, like I said, in our culture, typically we're taught how to get get it together, keep our emotions together, get it under control. Don't be so dramatic. Like all of these different ways that we can be conditioned that our our raw emotional honesty in the moment is not welcome. And in order to get into the window of tolerance, like that's essentially what we have to have is raw emotional honesty that says, one, right now I don't feel good. So I must need to detach from something around me. And that, okay, so I'm going to detach from this thing. And what am I going to do instead? And a good example of this, and this is something that I was listening to somebody else talk the other day, but I have the same thing. Like boxing and fighting, like UFC fights especially, like they really don't feel good for me to watch. And my brothers are big fans. And several times I've been over at my brother's house and they are, going to watch the fight or whatever. And I want to hang out. And so I'm like, okay, I can hang out. And I just won't even look at the TV. I know it bothers me. It doesn't feel good. I just won't look at the TV. And then just even listening to the fight, it feels so bad that I have to leave. I have to physically leave, and so I have to make that choice of, like, do I wanna stay and hang out? Yes, I do. Do I wanna feel like this? No, I don't. Which is bigger? Which is more which is more powerful in this moment? And the physical illness that comes with listening to the fight, or worse yet, watching the fight, tells me that, like, I really don't have a choice unless I'm gonna add a barf bag to this equation because I literally feel sick watching this. So I'm gonna leave, have a good night, and I'll see you guys next time. And so the visit gets cut short, which I get a little sad about, but it's like, again, am I willing to sacrifice how I feel in that moment to continue this moment with them? And that is getting back into the window of tolerance, is like making that decision over and over and over and over again of like, what are you willing to tolerate? And a lot of times, like, it means detaching from whatever it is. So the other tool is the observation deck. And in my mind, this is a space near the emotion, but not within it. When emotion waves begin rolling, we go to the observation deck to watch the way it moves within us. We watch the thoughts that come with the emotions. We watch the sensations of the emotion in our body. We just watch, like watching clouds move across the sky. And when I say go to the observation deck, I personally have not at all figured out how to be on the observation deck while I'm in the presence of another person. So for me, when I go to the observation deck, it means I need to go physically, and that only in that place can I fully like let go of all of my inhibitions about like trying to control this emotional energy is going to do inside me. Like I've talked a lot about like stoicism and like keeping control of our emotions and how like I feel like I've I've had my whole life this ability to feel emotion rise within me and to clamp it down like right here to where it cannot come out. It can't be vocalized, it can't be cried, it can't be thought about. It just is like locked in there right there. And this, like, opening of going into my own physical solitude and then letting the emotion flow, whatever it's gonna do. If that means that you're gonna cry, cry. If that means you're gonna scream at the top of your lungs, then scream at the top of your lungs. If you wanna punch something, like, whatever it is, like, go and do what it is that the emotion is wanting done, and while you're doing that, you're up here. You're observing the interworkings of the emotions themselves, the emotional energy with the thoughts, with the impulses in the body, with the sensations in the body. I mean, it is a freaking marvel to observe what happens when you are in intense emotion. It's amazing. But it's like a whole thing to, like, get out from under the emotion and get up to a place where you feel like you can observe it, and it's not just beating the hell out of you to be in it. Again, if you feel like it's beating the hell out of you, that's a time to get back into your window of tolerance. You need to detach, you need to jump trains, you need to go for a walk, you need to get back into a space that feels good for you. And as far as both of these, I feel like they both come back to a basis of worthiness and granting that you do deserve to feel as good as you can. That, like, the window of tolerance requires that you have some sort of boundary around how bad you're willing to feel. And that if it gets bad enough, you are willing to detach and come back to your window of tolerance. The observation deck, same thing. Like when we are identified with our emotion, like if I feel bad in the moment, like if I feel jealous in the moment, like back then, that was who I was. Like I am a jealous person. And like that's not how the sky would describe a storm. The sky wouldn't say I'm a storm. The sky would say there is a storm passing through me at this time, right? Like I was so identified with the emotion, it was defining me that I was caught in the undertow of it. I was being beat to hell by the thoughts, by the sensations, by the just the pain of it, and there was no perspective. There was no understanding of like even which way is up, and I was lost inside of it. And again, that's where I go to therapy and she helped me out a lot. Um, but I would say, like, as far as, both of these tools coming back to a basis of worthiness and granting that you deserve to feel as good as you can, that honestly, I know for my shadow, much of it is like, much of the shadow itself are the pieces that are keeping me from operating like that, where, like, basically my shadow are all the reasons that I feel like I don't deserve to feel good. I don't deserve to have good things. I'm bad. Like that's what's in the shadow is like worries and fears that like you really don't deserve to have everything that you want. That's not true, but we can definitely haunt ourselves with lots of different thoughts. Um, and that, okay, so like I said, like I feel like this is a really good foundation for we're going to talk about in the Sagittarius full moon and the energy that is present at the time that the full moon is exacting in Sagittarius. Yeah, there is one particular element that I feel like is the reason why that was such a good foundation, and that is because at the time of the Sagittarius full moon, Sagittarius being a fire sign and ruled by Jupiter, we would look naturally to the ruler, Jupiter. Where is it? What's it doing? What else is going on in that sign? And the ruler Jupiter is in Aries. And also in Aries is Mars and Chiron. And Mars is like 2 days, I think, before at the time of the full moon. It's like 2 days before its exact conjunction. The day before. So on June 15th, Mars will exactly conjunct Chiron, so it'll pass over Chiron, and that that piece is like the definition or the word that keeps coming is competition. Like, it's actually a healthy amount of opposition, and in the opposition, we are able to see more clearly who we are. That, like, if you just get people to echo back what you said and, like, everybody around you agrees with you and, like, nobody's challenging you, you don't learn, you don't grow, you don't see your own shadow. Like, it's when people disagree, it's when people have opinions that are very different from your own that you're able to clarify, like, who you are and the patterns and the programming maybe that you're operating under. Um, Talking to someone with a different perspective is very Sagittarian. Sagittarius just meaning expanding our horizons. Like that's essentially the evolutionary aim of Sagittarius energy, whether it be physically expanding our horizons, like especially when you're dealing with the ninth house, we are talking about physical travel, long distance travel, going far from the homeland and being dropped in a completely different culture. But Sagittarius in general just refers to expanding your horizons. So that could also be on a mental plane, learning and reshaping your beliefs to try to disintegrate any conditioning or programming that you've picked up from your childhood and to reintegrate pieces of yourself that you had previously shunned, probably because they were rejected by others in your early life. So, the full moon in Sagittarius is taking place on June 14th, 2022, at 23 degrees of Sagittarius at 6:51 a.m. Central Time. So, you'll adjust for your time zone on the planet. And the the kind of catchphrase or key takeaway of this energy that kind of rose to the surface, if you will, is that the full moon in Sagittarius, full moon's bringing manifestations in general, but this one bringing manifestations around discussions that help us to individualize our beliefs. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to find a bunch of people who agree with you. That means that you're going to have discussions that help you figure out what you believe. And again, because of these Aries components that are present, Jupiter in Aries, the Mars and Chiron conjunct in Aries, I feel like this is going to come through opposition, competition, challenge, and that there is so much value in those things coming in at this time, and that we don't have to take it personally as far as like just because we witness somebody being different than we are, we don't have to be like them. We're allowed to use their example to figure out more deeply what we believe, what we find to be true. Another pretty dominant piece of this energy is what's happening in Taurus right now, and that this plays, I think, deeply into this competition and challenge element. And that is this theme of claiming our own sovereignty. So the Taurus North Node, that is exactly what that wants from us. It wants us to own natural power. And the North Node is sitting there with Venus and in pretty close range to Uranus as well. And so there's this really giant theme running through the middle of all of this of liberating ourselves, kind of like giving that gift to ourselves that like grant like I've talked a lot about with Taurus energy that like it represents the ability to find inner peace, and that that is really a place where we can only get there when we grant ourselves permission to get there. It's not something that other people can give us permission to feel peaceful on the inside. Like if you're worried and anxious and fearful on the inside, no amount of reassurance from somebody else is ever going to make you feel different. It doesn't work like that. So the Taurus energy that's at play during this time is really backing us up in this whole like competition challenge, whatever. It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't even need to fight you per se. I can listen. I can feel the way that you oppose who I am, and I can take it all and I can use it to like sink even deeper into my embodiment of who I am. And that's really like kind of the the discussions that help us individualize our beliefs. I look at it very much like the sun in Gemini is bringing conversations that widen our perspective, that illuminate our biases, that show us where we are having blinders on our perception. Like people will show up and they will illuminate things that exist outside of our current awareness. And so there's lots of new ideas coming in while the sun is in Gemini. And now at this exact full moon, it's an opportunity to take all of the new ideas and thoughts and perspectives and opinions and so many different pieces of information that we've gathered while the sun has been in Gemini these few weeks and get to sift it all back through our own system and to feel through our Taurus embodied power what of this resonates as valuable for me personally and what of this is not how I see it, is not what I believe, and therefore I can simply let it go and just use it as the sharpening stone, the clarifying catalyst that it was, and let it go. Thank you, and let it go. Um, Easier said than done, sure, but that's ultimately, I think, what we're aiming for of claiming our sovereignty. Like, just because somebody disagrees with you does not influence who you are, what you think, what your identity is. Like, you get to be who you are no matter what. And that's this other piece of the Aries energy. I feel like this kind of goes back to Pluto retrograde just a little bit as well, is like there's this element of integrating our self-empowerment. Like actually allowing ourselves to have what we want. Like, what a concept. Um, I just finished a couple days ago recording the Aries North Node video for the series on my channel. And one of the phrases that is in there as far as like developing, excuse me, our Aries energy is enlightened selfishness. I love it. One of the best things I've ever heard to describe Aries energy is like the power of meeting your own needs and answering the call of your own soul. Like trusting that the way you feel, the urges, the impulses, the passion, that it is absolutely flowing through you for a reason, that like your soul knows the mission that you brought forward into this life and the impulses, the yeses and the nos are all guiding you towards like what was your soul's mission. And there has to be like as far as the integrating part, like the self-empowerment part, um, I think we can like figure out a lot of things logically and we can like understand how it works theoretically, but like actually integrating it into our right now moment, as in we feel a certain way, like, I'm at this family function and I want to leave. I don't feel good and I want to leave. And what do? Do you stay and put up with not feeling good, or do you allow yourself to leave? And these are the kinds of situations where we actually like this is the training ground for healing. Like we have the opportunity in that moment of not feeling good to integrate our empowerment by granting ourselves what it is that we want, what it is that would help us get back into our window of tolerance in that moment. So this is all you probably already have, like, pieced this together, but, like, basically, this is all happening in our body, and this is very much, like, indicated by Venus, the North Node, and Uranus in Taurus, like, this deep sense of we can feel inside our body what is a yes for us and what is a no for us. Like I said, like I don't have to think about I'm not hating on UFC fighting, for example, out of principle. When I watch it, I feel physically ill. So like there's no like logicking myself into watching this. Like I'm feeling physically ill, so I'm going to have to stop. And it's like that. It's like let that be your truth, Like, your body is talking to you all the time, and if it's saying like, "Hey, this stimulus is making me sick," then we should I mean, I probably would stop engaging with the stimulus, but again, if we aren't allowing ourselves to feel good, if we don't believe that we deserve to feel good, there's a missing link somewhere along the way that says you should just put up with feeling bad. And yeah, that leaves us feeling a little bit stuck. The other way we might feel stuck during this full moon, there is a square with Neptune. So Neptune is in the late degrees of Pisces, the moon is in Sagittarius, the sun is in Gemini. So there's a T square from the moon and the sun back to Neptune in Pisces. And this could definitely obscure our mental clarity. So, our ability to think logically and reasonably about these ideas that we're having, this new venture that we want to set out on, the new leading edge version of ourselves, like all of these things that could be being revealed during the full moon, there could be a noticeable lack of mental clarity, which I do think is a blessing in disguise. I I listened to a lot of other interpretations for the Sagittarius full moon, and that was one of the things that was pretty consistent about the square to Neptune being basically like a difficult aspect of this full moon. And I don't feel it that way. I think if you don't have mental clarity, you can't defend yourself, and that is probably a blessing in disguise for most of us because defensiveness comes naturally, especially when you're articulate, and it's like when you jump immediately into defensiveness, you lose your power immediately. You lose out on that Taurus embodied sense of, "I don't have to explain myself to anybody in order for me to do what works for me." So, I do think that this lack of mental clarity, while maybe it's a little frustrating, could also be really helpful in like don't even worry about your mental clarity. Like basically you don't need it right now. Like this is a matter of like feeling your truth inside your body personally for yourself. On the playlist, the prep playlist for today, there's one of the videos is by Denise Matthew and it's a human design full moon reading, and she goes through the gates that the planets are in for this transit. And she was talking about Jupiter, I think, is in gate 17, and that has to do with a lot of opinions floating around and how like Jupiter is also stationing retrograde like in the next couple months, so it's slowed way down basically. It's like kind of sitting still almost in this gate 17. And so we're going to be with this energy for an extended period of like basically people having really easy quick access to their own opinions. So it may not be the best time to go around sharing your new ideas, your new ventures, your new visions with like just anybody. Really, there's a caution that is naturally part of this full moon that I think the Neptune square is just helping us to take advantage of. The caution comes from like the sun and moon opposition for the full moon. The sun is in gate 12 in Gemini and the moon is in gate 11 in Sagittarius. And the sun in gate 12, the key word for gate 12 is caution. And it is a social gate. It does want to talk. It's part of our socializing energy, but it more dominantly is wanting the right time to talk than it just wants to talk. So there is a caution as far as like reading the room, reading the other person's face, like reading the moment. Is it the right time? Is this the right person to be having this conversation? What is my reasoning behind wanting to express myself in this way in this time? And if there are I kind of lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so basically to sum that up, the Neptune square I do think could be really helpful to like Neptune in Pisces is also loosely sextiling that north node in Taurus still. So again, like removing the mental clarity piece is only helping to bring our body online in a more significant way, I think. And because this is Sagittarius and Sagittarius has to do with beliefs, I personally think, like, especially because of that Mars Chiron conjunction and the Jupiter and Aries piece, it's like, one is what do you want? And two is how much do you believe in yourself? How much do you believe that you deserve what you want? Um, how much do you believe in your own dreams and that you should have them? How well do you believe in your needs and that they should be met? How well do you believe in your right to have whatever you desire? I see this full moon as a culmination of all the hard work that we have already done on ourselves. Like this Mars Chiron conjunction is sitting at a place where, Chiron's been moving over the first half of Aries for the last like 4 years. Like we are 4 years into this Chiron and Aries healing process, and we have done a lot of good work on ourselves in these last 4 years. So when I say hard work, that's what I'm referring to, but a culmination of hard work, desire, Jupiter in Aries, and belief, full moon in Sagittarius. So it's like, I do believe that this energy is bringing us to the leading edge of our own reality where the Sagittarius full moon is very much letting us see beyond as far as like where else, what other horizon do you want to continue exploring towards? But it's like if there's a limiting belief, if there's like I've done all this healing work and I've come so far, but there's still an issue in my deservability or my self-worth that I don't believe that I deserve to feel good, like that is going to cut you off at the knees as far as like pursuing this new venture, new idea, whatever the Sagittarius full moon is lighting up for you. So, to go into Sagittarius just a little bit, I've already touched on a few of these, it seems like. Yes, all but the bottom one. So, I'll cover the first two pretty quick. Sagittarius as an archetype is about stretching our horizons. That when I listen to the Book of Fire by Stephen Forrest, he says that there's three archetypes within Sagittarius. They are the voyager, the scholar, and the philosopher. And the voyager is basically the traveler, the person like moving around and seeing gaining new experiences. Basically, is the point of the voyager. Scholar, you're learning new things, you're studying new ideas and new thoughts. And then philosopher is basically taking all of the experiences, all the things you've learned, you've synthesized it inside of your being, and you are philosophizing like, what is the meaning of life? Basically, like, what is the meaning of your life? What is the meaning of all life? That is essentially what philosophy is aiming for. And once you've like kind of boiled all of your experiences down inside of yourself, you're left with your own essence of the truth. The highest frequency of Sagittarius is that you are eternally evolving your own truth, aka constantly on the edge of your reality and seeking new experiences, expanding with new thoughts and new ideas, new perspectives. That basically, like, the highest frequency of Sagittarius is realizing that the only truth you're ever going to find is the truth that you have in this moment. Because as soon as I find this truth in this moment, I have a new moment that expands the truth that I have. So, truth is an ever expanding concept. It's not one black and white uh, idea. The shadow of Sagittarius is basically getting stuck in very rigid beliefs and a rigid way of seeing the world, no matter what new experience you have. And most likely, because of your rigid beliefs about the world, you also aren't seeking out differing opinions or differing perspectives or other new experiences that would help to balance or correct the false perspectives that you are holding. Basically, what we're describing is dogmatism or black and white thinking, where you see a lot of this in religion, like diehards. You also see, not to bash on the religious community at all, because you also see it in academia, in science, in all kinds of places where people think that their way is the only way. I have found the one absolute truth, and here, let me install it into you so your life is better. That's not how truth works. Like, we all have to find our own truth in the moment and then continue to follow it into eternity as it evolves. So, recognizing the beliefs that we are holding that one, like we were given these beliefs, we were taught to believe this when we were small. Like, a lot of self-worth issues come, at least for me, especially, like they come from being given feedback when you're small that you're not good at things, that you're doing poorly at certain things, like you're not as good as the other kids at certain things. And when people give you that feedback, it plants these seeds of self-doubt and inferiority that grow and grow and grow into an eventual lack of self-worth. And that that's I think the shadow of all 12 archetypes is a slippery slope that is easy to get stuck into. And again, is like a great reason why knowing how to get back in your window of tolerance is like always a great idea. Because as we go into our beliefs and we find that, you know, personally, I think when I explored my Sagittarius energy early on, what I found was the summary is basically like we are the only ones standing in our own way. Like our beliefs are the limits of our reality. And if we have limiting beliefs about our believe that we should get to feel good, we believe that we're worthless, we believe that we're ugly and that no one's ever going to love us really. So of course this person's going to find somebody else and run away with them. Like you can have so many limiting beliefs that force you to live inside this version of reality. And recognizing our Sagittarius shadow is about recognizing where you are believing things that are hurting you. And your soul doesn't carry beliefs that hurt you. So if you have a belief that's hurting you, that was given to you in your conditioning. Your beliefs should feel good to you. They should feel empowering to you. Again, this brings us back around to the Taurus energy that we are so fortunate to have clustered up right now, where we can feel better than ever, like what feels good in our body and what doesn't. So, this is very helpful to feel the effects of our beliefs on our own systems. Essentially, this Sagittarius is about widening our worldview. And when we have that experience of like taking in a part of the world that we've never experienced before, um, we're inspired with new possibilities that we hadn't imagined previously. And that's really what's possible with this Sagittarius full moon is new possibilities of what is truly possible for you if your beliefs were wider, if you were more yourself to have what you want, your reality naturally gets bigger and it fills in with more of what you want. So obviously that's a lot simplified, but there is also on the prep playlist, there's something that I wanted to share that's called Sit Around the Fire. And it is a song, I guess, like kind of more of a meditation, but kind of a song. Um, where one of the lines that they repeat multiple times is clear your mind, open your heart, clear your mind, open your heart. And I feel like that is so the energy of this entire full moon, the entire picture, not Sagittarius part, but definitely the Aries part and the Taurus part. It's like, and that Neptune square that is robbing us of our mental clarity. Quiet your mind, open your heart. You can feel inside of yourself what feels good to you and what feels bad to you. And if you have a tolerance or a threshold, a boundary that says, I'm willing to let myself feel this bad, and if I get on outside of that, I need to rein it back in. I'm going to pull my attention back in here where I know it's going to feel okay. So ultimately, this Gemini Sagittarius axis is helping us to identify and speak our truth. And back towards that Sagittarius end of like, what is the meaning of your life? Why are you here? What is it that you want? What is your purpose in this world? And this energy is very much like helping us to, one, to know that better, but also to like find the right timing, the right place to say it out loud, to like claim our authenticity on a new level in a new way, maybe for the first time in our life, being authentic and not forcing ourselves to ever make ourselves be authentic in front of someone who does not feel safe. If that's the whole point of that gate 12 and the caution that naturally is part of this energy, like if someone in front of you feels threatening, like if I show them this, they're just gonna rip it apart, then definitely don't show them. Don't. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if there absolutely is somebody at around this full moon, around June 14th, where you are able to have some kind of leading edge conversation on the leading edge of your own truths, your own beliefs, maybe even stretching out beyond where you've been in the past, because there's someone who feels safe, who feels like, yes, I can open up and show my real self and allow myself to be seen. And if they do have something to say that is different from what I was believing, I feel safe enough in this space to explore my beliefs and to see how they're serving me, to see the net impact of those beliefs on my experience. So, like, I've talked a lot on my channel about speaking our truth. And I did a yearly mantra in 2021, which was 2021, the year of speaking truth. And every morning at the top of my journaling, I would write 2021, the year of speaking truth. And like December of 2020, so right before I started this, I had it in my head that the the brick wall that I was running up against in my life and my relationships was that I wasn't willing to say my truth out loud. I wasn't willing to speak my truth. And so I thought I was really smart. And I was like, well, I'm going to just, affirm it. And this will be my year of speaking truth. And I'll just do it and I'll push myself outside my comfort zone. And I get started in it. And it's, I mean, totally ironic and the universe's sense of humor, but it's like the reason I'm not speaking my truth isn't because I'm not willing. It's because I don't know what my truth is. And that's way different as a starting point as far as, like, really, it was like 2021, the year of knowing my truth, and now 2022, the year of speaking my truth, because it was a whole process in the beginning of even figuring out what the hell is my truth so that I can even try to say it out loud. That's a real part of it. And that's again where we tie in that Aries energy, and like where you can start with Aries energy is always self discovery. It's always an invitation into the deepest parts of yourself that says, I want to know you better. Like you saying this to yourself, I want to know who I really am. I want to see my whole self. I want to know my own leading edge desire. I want to know the reason my soul came into this world. Aries, right? Like this is very like building our self-awareness with even just offering this invitation of like I want to know a deeper level of myself. And personally, I think no matter where you are on this journey, we could all always invite I want to know a deeper level of myself. There's always going to be more into that. So as we invite the truth to come forward, ever forward, next we feel. We feel for our truth. We feel which of these beliefs is torturing me and which of these beliefs is empowering me. And we feel for the difference. We feel for, well, when I believe this, it mostly just puts a guilt trip on me. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you believe something that's causing like a pattern of negative emotions every time you're believing it, every time you're thinking about it, every time you're acting in accordance with these beliefs, like you have a guilt trip, it's like probably somebody outside of you taught you those beliefs. Like if they make you feel bad, they're not organically yours. So we're feeling for our truth. We're feeling for what feels good, what feels empowering for ourselves. And once we've done that for a minute, then we know. Then we know our truth. And even then, we're only on step 4. Like invite our truth forward, feel our truth, know our truth, and then I found out it's really not as much about speaking our truth as it is about standing in our truth, allowing ourselves to be in our window of tolerance and allowing other people to do whatever it is that they need to do. And I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to tend to my emotional energy. I'm going to manage myself such that I keep myself in my window of tolerance, unless I am intentionally seeking shadow triggering moments, which I do. I mean, that's the beautiful thing of like once you figure out how to get yourself into the window of tolerance, aka how to feel good on demand, then you can intentionally watch the documentary like what I was watching yesterday morning, where it was triggering me and I knew it would. And I intentionally asked myself before I pressed play, am I ready to be triggered? Am I solid in, okay, like I'm ready to go this way and I know my window of tolerance is here and I can feel my threshold. I'm in my body. I can do this and work up to my own tolerance. And like I said, I watched like 20 minutes of the episode and I had to go for a walk. I needed 2.5 miles to like get this energy out of me. So yeah, it's like you can do as much shadow work as you want. As soon as you have the ability to know like how to retrace your steps and get back to a place where you feel like you can breathe and function happily in the world. So standing slash speaking our truth, standing in slash speaking our truth. And then last but not least, never stop evolving our truth. So as soon as we know what our truth is, it becomes our next cage. I think that's also a Matt Kahn concept of like, there is no eternal truth. Like basically that as soon as you find like your truth, it's already old news and it's only the starting point for you to stand on top of it so that you can have a new experience so that you can evolve your truth further. So this is something that like no matter how far we get down our spiritual path, I believe there's always a deeper and deeper and deeper level of knowing ourselves, of allowing ourselves to feel empowered, allowing ourselves to own what our authentic truth even is. And again, trusting that we know and we can judge who is a safe person to get to see us in our authentic truth and who isn't in the right headspace, who just is in a spot where it's just not a good time for them to receive us right now. They don't have the capacity. There's something that I want to leave you with here as far as like I've watched this video 3 times in the last 3 days. It's a Matt Kahn video called Love is the Only Answer. And a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, I shared on an episode of the live stream that the poem by Matt Kahn called You Deserve More Love, Not Less. And in the poem, poem or whatever, it goes through I don't know, a lot, 10 different examples of like when you are judging yourself, you deserve more love, not less. When you are feeling misunderstood, you deserve more love, not less. When you feel like you're being unloving or short-tempered with those you love most, you deserve more love, not less. And so this video, Love is the Only Answer, the first like 10 or 15 minutes or so are him doing like an extended rendition of You Deserve More Love, Not Less. So already that right there was like soothing to my soul. And then the whole rest of it is a lot of different concepts. I took notes yesterday when I watched it of like the main takeaways. Basically, one of the main takeaways was other people's actions are never about you. They are never about you. They are always like people's actions are always showing you where they are in that moment. So, like, I was talking to somebody recently who was talking about like a teacher that didn't like them. And it's like when somebody doesn't like you, they don't have the capacity to like you because they personally aren't getting what they need, AKA they personally aren't giving themselves the love that they need. So they can't possibly give it to you in that moment. And that's not necessarily a reflection of you, like meaning you're not likable. It means that they don't have the capacity to like you right now. Like you're seeing their shortcomings. And at that point, like basically what he's teaching in that video is like, we don't have to take that personally. Like their actions are about them, about their own capacity in that moment. And we don't have to take it personally that like, oh, they have a grouchy face on, or you go up to someone and you don't even check what mood they're in. You just say, hi, this is who I am and let me tell you about myself, and then they snarl at you. And it's like, yeah, I mean, they were already probably in a really bad mood. And it again goes back to that gate of caution, that gate 12 of like really having some feelers, like really paying attention to when is it the right time? Who is the right person to receive me in this moment? Because one of the things that he said, oh, yeah, that like basically this is where most interpersonal problems come from. This is where most miscommunications come from, where most like hurt feelings come from, is when we look at people and we say they may not be open to receive me, but I'm more concerned with what I need from them than I am about how ready they are to receive me. So then we approach them even though they're not ready. They don't give us a response that's nice. And then we beat ourselves up because we're not lovable. And it's like if we would really read the room first, if we would pay attention to, is this person open and receptive? And he gives a really easy way to know if they're open and receptive. They will ask you a question. They will ask to know something about you. And that will be how you know that they are open and receptive to hearing about you, is that they will ask. And he goes through this whole thing about like, what if you just existed in the world and basically when you're with people, you show up and you cheer them on and you pay attention to them and you show interest in them and you basically say like, if you're open, I would love to get to know more about you. And then if they ask you a question about yourself, then answer what it is that they want to know about you. And otherwise, keep yourself to yourself. Like that's when we need to tell our story to somebody else, when we need them to hear us, when we when we make eye contact with them and then hold them hostage so that they have to listen to our story, we're projecting our needs onto the other person and we are basically demanding in that moment or at least expecting that they meet our needs. And that isn't fair basically to ever project our needs onto other people, and our needs are our responsibility. Like we absolutely deserve love and it's our responsibility to give ourselves that love. And so that Matt Kahn video, like I said, I've watched it every morning since the first time I saw it, and I'm gonna keep doing that until it like 100% clicks in my brain, um, because that's big stuff. I can very easily take other people's reactions towards me very personally, and there's just really no need for that. Like he talks about, if somebody's being passive aggressive towards you or you feel like they're being snippy or, rude or whatever, instead of taking it personally and being like, yeah, dick, like whatever, like what an asshole, instead of making it about me, like, oh, poor me, I didn't get a good reaction from this person, looking at the person and being like, it seems like you have a lot on your plate right now. And the person's like, what makes you say that? Well, you're really giving me a grouchy vibe. And, it just seems like you're processing a lot, got a lot on your mind, like you got a lot that you're facing and dealing with. And like basically just assume that if anybody is ever rude to you, it is clearly something that is going on inside of them. And to offer compassion in that moment. Because sure, I have my moments where I don't feel good and my response isn't, all light, love, and unicorns. Like I definitely have moments where I'm annoyed or frustrated or whatever. And that person deserves love, not less. So yeah, that video, highly, highly recommend. Yeah. So I'm not always able to read the room. Social cues can be challenging for me. And I agree. I I do think that it's something that we can practice though, and that there is such a thing as like basically practicing meeting our needs in private as much as we possibly can. And that if we are able to go with a 100% full cup into a situation, that basically we don't need anything from the situation. Therefore, we are a lot less wanting to control the outcome of the situation, and that we are more able to allow the situation to unfold into whatever it will naturally be, aka to kind of like stand back and like let it unfold. And I know for me too, the other factor in this was like, I used to have a really high level of social anxiety where being around other people, like, I was so insecure about my social skills that I would freak out if I was gonna have to make small talk with someone, and it wasn't them, it wasn't, like, it wasn't the outside situation, it was my own doubt that, like, I was gonna sound stupid, I was gonna not think of something to say, I was gonna just stare at them like a mindless organism of some sort, like, it was my own self-doubt that had me fearing that I was gonna say something stupid, and then that gave me such bad social anxiety that, like, not only could I not read social cues, I could barely stand to be around people long enough to try to read their social cues. Um, but yeah, there's a lot that goes into, like, when you are in the presence of another person, being able to, like, genuinely open up to them, open up to their energy, and sense where they are. And that is a skill set that I do think, like, I'm thinking in human design terms, like, that's basically how all the gates between the emotion center, the solar plexus, and the throat, like all the gates that go between those two centers, that's essentially what's happening is like you're feeling and then you're deciding, like, do I speak or do I not? And that's the only channel that I have is the 1222. So like basically this full moon is like happening right across from my sun. The sun is conjunct my sun and the moon is then opposite my sun, like at the time of this full moon. And so this is, yeah, this is that energy of like deciding, is it the right time to say what I want to say or is it not? And is the person receptive or are they not? And there's there's like an element of timing in having good communication. Like you can have the right thing to say and say it at the wrong time and have it not be received. Or, as long as it's the right time, it really doesn't matter how you say it because the person's readiness to receive it is open and online. And like you can do a bad job of explaining it to them and they'll still get what you mean behind your words, like the energy behind your words, because they're open and they're ready to receive it. Versus like if it's not the right time, like you can say it so perfectly, you can talk until you're blue in the face and they won't get it. So the timing, the readiness of the other person, the receptivity of the other person, these are things that we can practice. And I think with the gate 12, like how I work with this energy in my design all the time is you absolutely have to speak when you feel like speaking. So like let's say it's the perfect time and you have this whole story and you want to tell it and you're in your house all by yourself and maybe you call your friend or your mom or whatever and they don't answer. And so there's no one to tell your story to, but it's the right time. I have this story, I want to tell it. I want to open your mouth and start talking. Like tell your story to the empty room all by yourself. Go look at yourself in the mirror, tell it to the mirror. Go for a drive in the car, tell it to the air in the car. Like when you feel like talking, let it out. And I have found that this has healed my social anxiety more than anything else because basically what I was doing was walking into those situations like needing to tell my stories. Like I'm walking into a social setting expecting that this social setting serves its purpose in allowing me to express myself and tell my stories and, use my voice and all of that. And that not that that's not what a social circumstance is for, but I definitely went into it needy. I needed these needs met because I was meeting those needs of being heard through my social circumstance. And yeah, now that's not the case. Now, I mean, I record a podcast episode or I make a video or I just talk out loud in my house. I don't save my stories for other people generally. And when I do, when I save my story, I have a really exciting story and I call my mom because I want to tell her, or I call Dolly because I want to tell her, and then they're not available. Or worse yet, they answer the phone and they immediately start bitching about what's going on in their world. And when I was younger, I would listen to my mom be all like "Meow," and snarly, and then I'd be like, "Oh wait, I was gonna tell you something so cool," and blah blah blah, blah, and I'd start telling her, and she would shit all over it and like poop right on it or whatever. And it's like, yeah, again, if I had read her energy, she is dealing with her own issues. She doesn't have the capacity to hear about my exciting thing. And so I've basically just trained myself that who's listening isn't anything even close to as important as when is the right time to say it. And when the timing strikes, that I have the story, I'm ready to tell it in that moment. Don't save your stories, don't bottle up your messages and your voice and like all of that so that when you get around other people, now you need to exercise that. It makes it very difficult to respect the energetic cues that they're giving you versus if you've already exhausted your talking energy, you've already told your stories. Like, especially if I'm gonna coach somebody, I will intentionally spend an hour talking before we get on the Zoom because I want to, like, exhaust that energy in myself so that I am better able to listen and not feel so reactive, like I have to say something because that energy is pent up inside me. So, I don't know if any of that translates to you guys, but that's definitely how I work with the gate 12, and like I said, I have it hooked up to the gate 22, so mine's like that full channel, which isn't illuminated for this full moon, but, um, yeah, there will be ability to sense who is open and who is not. Yeah. That's me, very self-conscious and awkward, which makes Zoom meetings painful because I get to see my insecurities. Like, watching watching yourself back on video is very shadow provoking, right? Like, it's definitely the definition of you are going scuba diving. Like, when you watch a video of yourself or even just talking on a Zoom, like, if that's maybe what you're talking about, Andrea, where, like, even just having to like this, like, I mean, all I get to see is a big video of myself while I'm trying to talk to you guys, and that can be really challenging to, like, have to look at yourself and keep a train of thought. That definitely reminds me of last year when I was transitioning from my podcast to videos. And it was a very real process of like speaking my truth and like getting my throat center to open. That was never going to happen on video. Like I was so busy looking at myself and like this hair that's out of place and like my shirt's funky and like what about this and just like picking it apart like what I look like basically. And so the podcast was such a natural solution of like I mean you don't have to shower, you can be in your pajamas, you can have bed hair, you can like whatever and go on there and say what you need to say. And so the podcast was like such a oh, so much healing, so much medicine for my soul to not have to look at myself and to like get used to flowing my voice and like when I feel inspired to speak, open your mouth and speak it and, like, doing that on the podcast was very, very helpful as a starter. And then I had been doing that, I started at the end of February and then started doing videos regularly in September. So, several months of doing my podcast, and that gave me enough flow to be able to then get on video and press record and see myself and be triggered by what I was seeing, but I was already, like, kinda strong enough in my rhythm and my flow of using my voice that seeing myself triggered me, but not enough to push me out of my flow. And now, I mean, I look at myself and, of course, like, all the normal things about myself, my appearance that I normally go to are all right there, but it's like exposure therapy, like, this is my 23rd live stream or something, and I've made a ton of videos, couple hundred at this point, like, once you've done it enough times, like, it's not that it doesn't bother you, it's not that you don't still see yourself and see things about yourself that might rub you the wrong way or you wish were different, but the more you do it, truly, the easier it gets, and having the courage to come face to face with that leading edge of, like I mean, because I'm guessing that there are people who like, the Zoom thing bothers them to the point where they can't join, you know? Like, this insecurity is literally holding them back to where they can't even come and participate in the community versus, like, it really makes me uncomfortable, but I do it anyway, and it really makes me uncomfortable, but I'm doing it anyway, and maybe it gets easier, I don't know yet, it mostly just makes me uncomfortable, but at least you're doing it anyway. So, I personally think that there's a lot to be said about even finding the places where your fear is, like where your insecurities are, where the leading edge of what you're allowing yourself to do and have and be, finding that leading edge and then being uncomfortable going beyond it, but doing it anyway. The one who is uncomfortable deserves more love, not less. So, yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it. I have to go to the bathroom really bad. So, I'm gonna go do that, and yeah, I I have a lot, it feels like, swirling in my life at this time, and one of the things that I am super stoked to share with you is that last night we launched enrollment for my new gr group coaching it's not a group coaching program, I swear. Um, virtual groping. No, it's a group coaching program called Soul Revelation and Spiritual Business. And it is 12 Sundays over 5 months, July to December. And the enrollment is now open in Patreon, and we have people signed up. So we are officially launched with the group coaching program. It is coming to life. I am so excited. Actually, 37 days from today will be the first session. So, super pumped. If you are a Patreon member, you can access that post where it shows all the information that there is about the course and what to expect and all of that, and gives you the links that you need to go and enroll if that's what you want to do. Thank you, Maddie, for putting the Patreon link there. For those of you that are not members, the Patreon is a pay what feels good subscription that charges monthly and can go as low as $1. So if you want to be a member of the Patreon and join us for the monthly Sacred Circles on every fourth Tuesday, I do welcome you to do that. I did not want price to be a limiting factor on the Sacred Circle community. So please join us there if that's something that you're interested in. You do not have to be a member of the Patreon to take advantage of this course. Open enrollment, where we'll post it open for everybody outside the Patreon, will be on June 18th. So the thing with the Patreon, though, is there is a little bit of a discount for my Patreon members to join the course at a slightly discounted fee before we open it up to everyone. Also, there is a limit to the number of people who I'm going to take into the course just because I do want to keep it small enough to be personalized. But I also want to let it be big enough to create some fun connections and networking opportunities. That's probably one of the things that I'm most looking forward to. In addition to the 12 Sundays, I'm going to do the 12 modules that I have planned. Um, I want to schedule like 3 or 4 social activities, where one of them, as an example that I have in mind, is like a show and tell, where when you get on Zoom, you can use the breakout rooms. I don't know if you guys have ever used those, but essentially, like, take the whole group, all the attendees on the Zoom, and then say, I want 5 members per breakout room. So that's 4 breakout rooms or however many. And then it creates these little small breakout rooms where there's only 4 to 5 people in each one. And then we do show and tell. Look, I brought this deck of cards. I brought this crystal. I brought this, thing I want to show you online. Here, let me share my screen. Like, whatever it is that you're wanting to connect with other people about, like, bring it for show and tell. So I do think that while, yes, the program is about soul revelation and spiritual business, that's what the modules are for. I do think that the even cooler aspect of a group like this are the connections that the members will make between each other. So I do get excited about facilitating social aspects of the group as well. Um, though that is not required. So yeah, if you're interested, please check that out on the Patreon. Like I said, I'll have it launched openly for everyone next Saturday, a week from tomorrow. And then we will kick that off on July 17th. So feel free to check that out if that is something that interests you. We'll put the links in the description boxes for those of you on the replay. And yeah, I think that's all I got. So you guys have a great rest of your day, a wonderful weekend. Happy Sagittarius full moon. And I will see you on the next one. Okay. Okay. Bye.